You're torturing me. Don't care.
Have you had your service before? Or is that your first time going for one act? First time.
First time.
It's hard to be.
I think that's when he said.
Right. Kick off. We'll canter through this agenda. I'm sorry it's during the election period, but that wasn't of my making. Obviously, business goes on, but we are where we are. Councillor Gackle's on the line. Unfortunately, he won't be able to participate in the meeting because Councillor Simpkin is here in person. So, just for the record. Right. First of all, then, are there any apologies? I think we have a number.
Yes, Chair, we have apologies from Councillor Butlin, Councillor Fitzgerald, Councillor Overton, Dawn Ward, Susan Ward, Councillor Welsh and Kevin Rogers. Thank you.
Any notification of substitutes?
Councillor Simpkins for Councillor Gackle.
Yeah. Right.
Oh, and just to let you know, we've got Councillor Matt Dormer on the call for your teams, Chair.
Right. Okay, any declaration of interest? No. Minutes of the 22nd of March, you approve those, please?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. Right, moving on then to the deeper devolution deal, the DDD. Rob, you're picking this one up, I'm told.
I am. Thank you, Chair. Good morning, and good morning to all of the board this morning. So the paper, I think, sets out the latest position on the deeper devolution deal in a fair bit of detail, but I'll just go through some of the key points, if that's okay with you, Chair, just to highlight the key elements of the deal that has been agreed. So as members of the board will be aware, during the last 12 months or more since the publication of the Levelling Up White Paper, the region has been developing its proposals for the devolution deal and the next phases of devolution, and particularly in terms of the housing and land portfolio, those proposals included 4 main areas of the submission. That included a regeneration fund, a further regeneration fund for the region, a land reform programme, an approach to affordable housing, and the levelling up zones which had been developed over the previous 12 months or so. And just to update on the inclusions then of the agreed deal that was signed earlier in March this year, for each of those areas, there's an agreement to £100 million of further brownfield funding to be devolved to the region to support placemaking, housing and urban regeneration. There's a target within this fund for an additional 4,000 homes, but what this fund does give us, which is wider than the existing funds that had previously been agreed with government, is an opportunity to support wider types of schemes. So we can support commercial schemes, mixed use and estate regeneration schemes through this fund, which gives us much greater flexibility in terms of the types of things we can bring through for funding from the Combined Authority. We're currently in discussions with the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities on the terms and conditions for this fund, which we're hoping to agree as soon as possible, and therefore be able to start to deploy the funding within summer of this year. Worth also just mentioning that this funding will be, the intention from government is that this funding will be deployed through the existing mechanisms of the Combined Authority, so applications through the Single Assurance Framework and via Investment Board for approval. The next part of the devolution deal is the Land Reform and Public Land Programme, and this contains a firm commitment from government through the Cabinet Office to work with the region on how government land is disposed of. So government land within the region and the disposal of that land or the use of that land will be subject to a joint plan agreed with the region so that we can maximise the benefits of how government land is disposed in line with other public land within the region to maximise the benefits and the potential assets that can be brought forward. So a significant move from government. This would be the first agreement between government and a region for this type of approach, and builds on the Place Pilots programme that has been developed by the region in recent months with the Cabinet Office and the Local Government Association. The public land programme also includes commitments to working with the region on more flexible approaches to compulsory purchase orders and other types of land assembly, and a review of local development orders to establish how best they can be used if used in the region. The third main part of the deal in terms of housing and land is the affordable housing programme. The current programme is delivered by Homes England as the government's delivery agency, and in the first phase of the devolution deal process between now and 2026, the Combined Authority will be working with Homes England, local authorities and registered providers to accelerate and deliver more affordable homes in the region. There's a commitment to invest in at least 200 million of affordable homes programme funding in the Combined Authority area, raising to 400 million, an ambition to deliver 400 million pounds of that funding within the region by 2026. Clearly, this is a substantial target, and a target that we're already keen to progress, and working very closely with Homes England at the moment with a joint team set up to maximise the opportunities that are currently in the system and coming through the system, whilst also looking at other opportunities that might come forward now with a blend of funds from Combined Authority funding and the Homes England programme, and a real opportunity here to really maximise that delivery in the region. Phase 2 of the Affordable Homes programme post 2026, so at the end of the existing programme, which is set up till 2026, the next Affordable Homes programme or any successor programme from government will be fully devolved to the region. So the Combined Authority will be responsible for the strategic direction, the negotiation of the settlement, and how that funding framework is delivered in the region. So clearly, between now and 2026, we have a target to demonstrate progress and demonstrate our ability to deliver, and from 2026 onwards, that framework and that strategic accountability will sit with the region as a whole. Again, huge amount of work to be done here, and work ongoing already in terms of how we start to implement that and bring that program forward. And we'll be having consistent and long-term engagement with all the relevant parties, including local authorities and registered providers, between now and then, to make sure that we really bring this program forward to the best extent. And then finally, Chair, in terms of the main elements of the deal, the levelling up zones, which have been in development for the last 12 months or so, irrespective of the various investment zone proposals from government itself, the levelling up zones have been co-developed by the region, led by local authorities with the Combined Authority support, and up to six of those key corridors are identified in the devolution deal. There is a firm commitment from government for 100% business rates growth retention over 25 years for each of these zones, and the ability to use other types of investment in regeneration to bring forward these schemes and bring forward these zones via local designation. So again, working very closely with the department and other partners at the moment in terms of understanding the process and developing the process for how these zones will be designated, how they will be signed off, and how we agree with government on the next steps of developing any zones, which is again a huge impetus and a huge step forward for the region. And then finally, just underpinning all of this work, there is the commitment to a strategic place partnership between government, the Combined Authority and its partners. This will very much be a much more wide-ranging proposal than the previously developed strategic partnership with Homes England. This will look at how the Combined Authority, Homes England and other government agencies work together to really deliver transformational change, and will be a significant document in terms of both commitment and intent of how the devolution deal is developed and delivered. So those are the main points of the paper, Chair, and happy to take questions if there are any.
Rob, I understand from speaking to Gareth that the money doesn't come in one tranche. It actually comes in, it's drawn down when we've actually proven the outputs that we said we'd achieve. And basically we go back to government and say we've done that, can we have some more money? Is that about right? And secondly, does this allow us to more flexibility on an intervention rate?
Yes, Chair. So the single regeneration fund currently with government, the proposal from government is that it's paid in three yearly tranches, and as per the current programmes. We will do an annual report to government to set out what's been delivered in the previous year. We've got a session with DLUC to work out the finer details of that as we move forward, but that's the intent. It will be 3 yearly tranches. In terms of the intervention rate, as we've discussed a number of times at this board, there is no fixed intervention rate on our existing funds. However, we do clearly have to work towards an average in terms of how we score that out and how we manage to deliver the fund as a whole. This additional funding will have a programme target of 4,000 homes with the 100 million funds, but obviously it gives us much broader opportunity to deliver things like commercial and mixed use. So we will have the opportunity to more flexibly deliver alongside a kind of wider remit of those 4,000 homes as well.
Aaron?
Yeah, just to add, Chair, clearly we're waiting, sounds like Rob, for lots of detail from government officials, whether it's on the £100 million regen fund or the Cabinet Office Land Partnership or the DLUC Strategic Place Partnership. And as I briefed Councillor Bird ahead of the meeting as well, Rob, we haven't seen anything on levelling up zones in terms of guidance, criteria or process at all at this point in time. Probably is worth noting, Chair, that all of these, as the conditions come through, they'll need to go to the senior local authority officer group within the region, which is the central group of senior local authorities that deals with the devolution deal. So that would be quite important for visibility of any conditions that come through on things like the £100 million fund, on the land reform partnership, on the affordable housing programme, etc., because we'll clearly need to have regional agreement for any of those different items before we agree anything with government. I think what Rob's just alluding to, Chair, is we are already getting a bit of pushback, and I think just on your point, Chair, on payment in tranches, I think, Rob, we're going to push back quite strongly on that, Chair, because the principle of the deal, is certainly that I saw it, was that it was £100 million for the region to decide how it was deployed. We recognise that will need to be in line with a appropriate assurance framework, a statutory assurance framework agreed with government. But the original intent was that there would be £100 million share available for the region to deploy in a flexible way, subject to meeting the outcomes. So we will, I think, Chair, if you're happy with this, probably will be pushing back to the original intent of the devolution deal as we saw it, which was £100 million for the region to spend on brownfield funding. And I think just an answer to the intervention rate, certainly in my perspective, is £100 million needs to deliver 4,000 homes overall. That's clearly a much higher intervention rate than we've currently got. So that is beneficial from our point of view in terms of how we look at some of the more difficult to deliver brownfield sites within the region. We would obviously like to have got more money, but as always with these things, if we can prove we can deliver on the original tranche, we're much more likely to secure more money. So the original tranche of the Brownfield Housing Fund share was 84 million. We now have 130 million of the Brownfield Housing Fund, and that's because of delivery in the early phases of the land fund.
I think it's important that we compile a list of our, if you like, our best brownfield sites that we can bring forward. I think that would be interesting, and across the whole of the Black Country. So that we can see where in actual fact we can make that difference. We do have difficulties, of course, with people, landowners who don't want to sell. I mean, there's one in my own ward, which was Moxley Island Park. But in actual fact, that could be a substantial housing development site, even though the owner doesn't answer my calls anymore, probably because he lost his judicial review twice. But I think there are sites where we do have unwilling landowners who don't want to do anything with it. Why? I don't know. I know they're not making any more land, but we need to put pressure on these people to bring them forward, because otherwise we end up building around the periphery of a brownfield site. But the people who move into those properties have always got the brownfield site in the middle of the river. Steve?
First of all, I don't know why we're having this discussion about the devolution deal when we're still waiting for government criteria. For me, and this is the second meeting that I've been to where we've been discussing the devolution deal. None of this has gone to leaders, and it's the leaders who make the decisions in the combined authority, not the Metro Mayor, not government. It's the leaders, the 7 Mets. So, you know, I feel like I'm being bounced into a position that that the government are taking up. Are they going to give us devolution or not? It's really important that they do stick to what they've said. Now, I've got a couple of issues that with this moving forward is even the mayor has said himself, we've got to move away from the begging bowl driven culture. And this is exactly the existing process that we've got. We should be looking at sites on the merits of the outputs that come back, and the combined authority should be making sure that we touch those outputs. You know, it's for local government to decide what intervention needs and what gaps we need to do with our Worstville sites. And you're quite right, Mike, that the Black Country is the worst because of its heavy industrial past. So, you know, we're left now with the hardest sites across the combined authority to develop. And that we need to get away from the single commissioning framework. Rob said at the beginning that we don't know it, but we don't need that intervention, but we need to demonstrate how we're going to do it. Well, let's do it on the merits and judge us on the delivery. That should be for us to do at the combined authority level, for us to do. You know, land reform, we talk about land reform. Now that's the local government who's got the land, not the combined authority. We need to have a conversation with government of how we get the land reform that no one talks about employment land. All we've talked about is housing, so we need to make sure that there's something goes in to the discussions about employment land as well, because with all these new houses that's going to be built, people need jobs. Talking about CPO, it's okay talking about CPO and having the legal mechanisms. Where's the funding that goes with it? Does that come out of the regeneration pot? Housing targets that you've said we've got to build 4,000 for this money that's coming through. Have we hit our targets from conception of the combined authority with build and more? Because I know that we could have done a lot more because of the single commission framework has held us back. I'm really do that. I think we need to have a discussion again at leaders level about levelling up zones and how it benefits not just the individual authorities, but the whole of the combined authority. So you've said that there's top-up grants and existing. So have we used all the existing resource with regards to the grants that we've got? Is there any underspend? Because I know government, if there's any underspend, they want it back. You know, historically they do. So affordable housing. Who determines what affordable housing is for a start off? We need again local authority driven targets for and the conversation's got to be bottom up, not top down about affordable housing, because I don't know about most elected members in this meeting. My casework is full about people trying to get houses. There is a lack of houses. So, you know, we need a robust programme that's driven by local authorities to get and secure funding. And we've already got the delivery agents, have we? We've got Wolverhampton Homes as our arms length. Sandwell have got their Sandwell Homes. Dudley got the same. Birmingham got the same. You know, so why are we in a conversation with our providers that we've got already in existing local authorities? It always mystifies me. So we need to be clear. And then about the affordable housing, what's the impact on the non-constituents? What's the share with the non-constituents within this 1 billion or 1.5 billion? So there's too many questions that for me that need us to do. So we also need to make sure that the local authorities have a direct conversation with Homes England in this partnership, and that feeds back up into the combined authority, not the other way down. Because that's got to be driven by local authorities. We're best placed to know what's needed in our local authorities, and we're accountable in that respect. What I would ask moving forward is this big pot for regeneration, will it be judged on the merits of the proposals that come forward, or will it just be target driven? Because we're going to miss a trick if it's just target driven. There's just a few things.
I think you raised quite rightly the issue of the share out, if you like, of the money. I wrote to Laura Schoaf, and I don't know whether you had a copy of her reply. Yes, she says Thank you for the email. I will ensure there's a full devolution deal update on the agenda for the next Mayor and Portfolio Leads meeting. The emerging implementation plan will set out line by line how each element of the deal will work in practice. So today, it's just, it's not a decision-making committee as such, it's just for information. Gary, do you want to pick up some of the comments, or Rob, that Steve's raised?
So maybe if I just deal with the facts, sort of the points of fact. So the land reform piece is only about government land. It's only about the national government estate. That was one of the key principles when we did the devolution deal, that this wouldn't be about local government land share. This would be about the national government estate. So it's a deal with a cabinet office in central government. Just on the second one, affordable housing, the definition up to 2026, I believe, Rob, is the definition used by Homes England under the affordable housing programme, because that's up to 2026 is using the government's national affordable housing business case. So just on that, about what's the definition of affordable housing up to 2026. Beyond 2026, Chair, I'm sure there'll be lots of debate and discussion about whether we could use the regional definition or whether we could use other definitions of affordable housing. Just on CPO, I think Councillor Simpkins' point on funding is one of our concerns. So obviously we've got the existing devolved housing and land funding programme. That's all capital, Chair. I think one of the questions is the revenue funding that's needed for CPO, because we've done a few CPOs within the Combined Authority, and we've done a joint CPO with Dudley Council. Certainly is the revenue funding that's one of the areas that really needs looking at. The 4,000 homes is a minimum target we do have to hit for the 100 million that is baked into the devolution deal. That's a target we do have to hit, again, if we're going to secure further funding. But within that, we can use it to support, as it says here, commercial mixed use and employment for the first time. And yes, we do have existing housing funds available. So we've got a pipeline with each local authority across all 17 councils of the projects that come forward in your own area, Councillor Bird, and in Councillor Simpkins and other areas. Those come forward, they're tested against government criteria. So we have to refer to the single commissioning framework, but fundamentally it's the test government sets us for those criteria, which just remind the board what those are. The tests that are required for devolved housing and land funds are you must be the funder of last resort. Yes. So that's one of the tests. It must be in market failure as defined by the Treasury. It must be value for money. It must hit a BCL, which is called benefit cost ratio, of a minimum of 1 to 1. And it must pass the necessary sort of legal due diligence checks, obviously as a public body giving funding. Those are the key criteria. And as I said to the board before, when we said to the investment board, the two areas where schemes often fail, Chair and board, is around meeting the funder of last resort tests and meeting the test of Treasury market failure. So those are the two tests. And the process is the same across the whole of the Combined Authority in terms of an expression of interest stage, which makes sure that applicants don't have to submit a full grant application if there's not a likelihood of them securing funding, and then a grant application, and then it goes to investment board through investment panel, which is a local authority group first. So that's the process we're operating for all the housing and land funds. We are looking at, can we make it even more efficient? What can we do to try and make it more efficient? Can we use delegated decision making to speed schemes through, where they're within the criteria that have been agreed by the board, all those sorts of things. And in the private session, Chair, we'll come to 2 schemes we've approved in the last month through the programme. But just on the different points Councillor Simpkins raises, and then on levelling up zones as we stand today, as I said, we don't have any further guidance from government. Our basic principle is that there are 6 levelling up zones in the mix, which are the 6 that were written into the devolution deal. But as you said, Chair, this is just an information update, because we just want to make sure the board is cited on how we're progressing. There will need to be a decision making by leaders, chief executives, as we go through with devolution mobilisation. Hopefully that answers some of the questions, cases.
It does, and thank you, Gareth, for that. But again, where's the devolved powers to us if we've got to stick rigidly to government criteria? Sure, don't know what the definition of devolution is in government, but to me, it's for us to make our own decisions moving forward, and then to be judged on those decisions on the outputs that we achieve. For how many times have we come to this investment board, and we could have achieved so much more. So you know, if it's going to be devolution, then devolve it to us, rather than set the criteria and then judge us on our merits moving forward. And it'd be interesting to have a discussion on the regeneration part, as it's so big, because how do we come with a criteria that sets out who gets what where? Is it going to be judged on schemes moving forward? Is it going to be just judged on the share across the 7 Mets? And so we need, this is what I say, I feel like I'm being bounced into decision-making process by having these come to us on a couple of meetings previously, is that it's already cut and dry. So what's the point of devolution?
Well, it's definitely not a decision here today. The only decisions we've had were the decisions that led to the devolution deal on the framing of the different asks. At this point, and as we go forward, when we get criteria from the government, the combined authority, its local authorities will need to make a decision as to whether or not to accept those criteria, or to whether to push back on those criteria.
I think the real nub of this is public accountability, in as much that when money comes from government, it always comes with strings attached, and the public accountability has to be with the criteria that they've set down. Devolution is just a word that's used, but in actual fact, it's you will have this, you will have the decision to make, but this is the reason when you can make that decision. So quite genuinely, there isn't anything as devolution, except we've got some more money to actually distribute, subject to the rules and regulations being set down by Treasury. That's the real facts.
And the difference here, Chair, that I know you've fought very hard for, and as has this board, is up to this point, so much of our funding has been focused on housing schemes and housing only schemes, because that's been the target, Councillor Simpkins, and it's been a very tight target. So the land fund, the target was 8,000 homes from £100 million. Actually, that's a tough target to meet because of the nature of our brownfield sites. So the fact we've got a scheme here that, yes, is within those rules, which, as you say, Councillor Simpkins, are drawn tightly, but we can spend it on employment, mixed use, estate renewal, and we don't have to have new housing outputs from every scheme, is different to our current funding, Chair.
Yeah, in actual fact, I had a conversation with Gareth on Thursday of last week about a site in Sandwell, which is a commercial site, which is a business that's been established for some time, but they're moving to a different site. And where we're falling down there is that it doesn't appear to be the funding of last resort. And that's quite a substantial business in Sandwell. They employ about 60 people. Gifford's is the name of the company on Calvin Way. And likewise, we've got another one which we've been lauding the fact that we can build all these houses at Friar Park in Sandwell. Now, my colleague from Sandwell would be waving the flag and saying, yeah, let's see some regeneration. The difficulty we're having at the moment is Sandwell are asking for a figure of that land, which is a figure that we can't seem to get to on a Red Book valuation. But I think we need to get together on that, and working with Homes England as well. I think we can bring that scheme forward. It's about 400 housing. Is it? Yeah. But, you know, I do believe that and I'm not picking up Sandwell today, by the way, but there are some unwilling landowners who have a valuation in the private sector. They have a valuation which we can't seem to get to, but we can make some exceptions, but within the rules that are set down to us. So, but it's work in progress. So I think I'd like to see if we could, Rob, at the next Housing and Land Board, what sites we believe we can bring forward, and what are, I mean, it's only one side of A4, I don't want a full report, just basically the sites that we've identified that we would like to see developed. And if there is any resistance from the landowner, whether we can actually send them a horse's head or something like that, and see if we can get them to talk to us and make sure that we can get that forward. Because at the end of the day, they aren't making any more land, we all know that. But I think that we've got a job to do, and that is to make sure that regeneration, whether it be commercial or indeed housing, comes forward at a pace. Happy with that? Okay. Moving on then over to you, Pat.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bird. The title for this paper is an update on the plan for growth, but what we're actually doing under that general heading is bringing together a number of strands of work which are taking place at the same time. So the plan for growth, this is about supporting the growth of the economy. It's particularly focusing on the 8 nascent clusters set out within that document. One of the particular areas of this group is around the future homes strategy and the ability to use to deliver on zero carbon homes and advanced manufacturing and construction. One of the tasks around the plan for growth is to have a particular focus on the supply side of that, so we can get businesses coming into the West Midlands who can support that kind of activity. That then links into employment, land supply, and at a point last year, this board asked for us to work with local authorities to start to provide some kind of regional perspective on land supply across the region. The local authorities have commissioned work on a strategic employment land study, looking at sites of 25 hectares plus, whether there's a need, what the deficit might be, what the potential solutions might be for that. And the last thing, and we're supporting the local authorities in that study, but one of the last things to mention is the fact that this all leads into a conversation around pipeline development, which then takes us back to the flexibility that we have of the original, of the recent devolution deal. So what we're trying to do, working with local authorities, working with our own economic growth team, is to bring all of those activities together to ask you to comment on any particular priorities, emphases you'd like us to place on this work going forward. And we talked to the delivery steering group a couple of weeks ago about having a working group set up to address all of these matters in more detail. But one of the most important things is being able to link together those 4 areas of activity so that we're not dealing with them individually, but seeing the whole picture.
From a personal point of view, I've been saying for some time, I'd like to see a company based in the West Midlands that deals with advanced manufacturing. I know we've got local homes or locale homes in Aldridge, which Joe and I were instrumental in starting off some years ago. We gave them a piece of land and it's now a substantial business for the Accord Group. But if we are to look at zero carbon, one of the biggest issues is not having to transport stuff around the country. And if we could create that in the West Midlands, then, or in Junction 3 of the 54, I think there's some employment land there. I don't know where that is in the scheme of things. But I think if we could get somebody local, in advanced manufacturing, then that would be a great stride forward and would bring opportunities for youngsters coming out of school to learn what we believe. Certainly we have been believing for the last few years, that the way forward is to use advanced manufacturing for housing. It gives them a new skill and therefore the opportunities of employment within that sector is something that is new to the employment sector in the region if we were able to secure such a company. Gareth?
Just to say, Chair, I think Mark Farmer's future house building task force in the region is due to come into the next board, Pat, an update on the future home strategy.
It will be to the June meeting of this board. Yeah.
So you get an update in June from Mark Farmer, who is our independent chair of that task force.
Yeah, I'm supportive of the paper moving forward, but we need to marry up the skills gap, the skills deficit. That's really important that we do that, and not just for the skills now, but the skills for the future. So we need to make sure, and if there's any providers that are out there and they actually adhere to our targets and outputs, not that we just give cash over the counter and say get on with that. We need to make sure that we have the right skills, we're in the right place, hitting the right people, and it needs to make sure that we do that. So the skills is a big agenda for me in regards to this, and it is the future. You mentioned about zero carbon and the carbon capture. Let's have institutions and universities that are actually working on the solutions of the future, and that's what we should be looking at. And again, that'll have to be our targets of what we meet and also the criteria of of what our providers do and what, the way that we can upskill our workforce. So it's really important that we do that.
I agree with that. The skills gap is something that's been with us for 2 or 3 years or more now, and we don't seem to be able to close that gap. You know, when you're looking for the bricklayers of the world, the electricians, the plumbers, they're just not there. They will, people find it easier to go and work with one of these than go out in all weathers and work on a building site. I think that's about right. Okay. Any other questions or comments? No? Thank you then. Moving on then, I'll just the agenda, where are we? We're back to Rob. I think, hope we're not. We're going into private session, that's where we are. I move the appropriate resolution that we're going to private then.
Seconded.
Thank you.